Hello, gamers. Today we are going to be making an Empires of the Undergrowth Ants tier list. This will be the first of a few tier lists I'm going to make, but this one will be the first. Again, finally, this will be opinion, so if you disagree, you can say you disagree, and that's fair, but this is my opinion. Alright, let's start. So, Army Ant Majors are a very strong unit, and are basically the glue that holds army ants. That is the core of army ants, and what makes them so difficult to deal with. If you don't know, as they attack, other ants around them, other ants of the same colony around them, get stronger. So this is what makes them ridiculously strong, because it stacks like 45 times. They attack faster, and they deal a lot of damage. Luckily, it does go away after a little bit, their little gamer rage mode. But while it's up, they can kill a bullfrog in like 2 seconds at max rage. It's ridiculous. The only thing keeping them even somewhat in check is their cost. They are very expensive. However, it doesn't matter because they're probably the second strongest strat, and the only reason Counterpart Colony is as strong as it is. In my opinion, S tier. Alright, next. Mr. Army Ant Media. Army Ant Media are decently strong for their cost, especially at level 3. At level 3, they actually get pretty good. But they're kind of weak otherwise. But because they're paired with big boy Army Ants, they hold themselves together pretty well, and they deal a lot of damage for their cost. They are good glass cannons and have a good cost and recharge. So they will go in middle of the pack. Alright, let's get to possibly the most broken ant in the entire game. Big-headed ant super soldiers are 140 food and cost 14 to respawn, and are the only reason big-headed ants are strong as they are. These are probably the best ants in the game. They attack ridiculously fast, have way too much health, have way too much damage. They have an execute that kills anything that is not immune to execution, so anything that's not an army ant major or a large insect. And a charge that knockbacks and stuns things in a large area. When there's a lot of them, they will chain stun you. Your ants will not get to move. These are ridiculous. What are you thinking, Slug Disco? Yeah, they're going in S tier. Alright, these frickers. So these are your big-headed ant little boys. They're known as majors, but they're not really. They cost 25 food, and they are garbage. Like, literally. These are easily the worst ant in the entire game. And that's fine, because they have super soldiers. The only use for them is early game, to help defeat small things, and to help take off the pressure off of our big boys. Otherwise, they are garbage. Never use them. Alright, next. Little black ants. Little black ants are very strong when used correctly. They are not used correctly in the 2 levels of 4.x. There's nowhere near enough soldiers and way too many workers, so they can't properly attack you. But when there are enough of them, they are a major pain in the ass. They can and will obliterate colonies, especially when you get enough of them. They're very cheap, so you can spam lots of them. Their Gaster flag confuses and weakens enemies around them, meaning they can easily swarm them and take them down, especially big swarms of things like fire ants. Yeah, they do take a large swarm and are weak to AoE, but against other ants, they are basically perfect. They're going in A tier, because they still are not as OP as these guys. Alright, black ants. So black ants are your jack of all trades, middle of the road kind of ant. Um, I don't like them, but I can see their usage. They're actually pretty decent at level 3 and with meat wall in the form of carrium because they serve as little mini tanks. That deal somewhat of a damage, but they they cost a decent amount, and otherwise their attack damage is still pretty middling, and they still die pretty easily. Overall, they're okay, but they're going here. All right, vigorous fire ants. Vigorous fire ants are really dumb. They are very, very strong, and they will kill you. Um, I personally prefer them over pervasive, but I mean, you get a large enough swarm of them, and that speed is helpful for gathering and getting back to the battle faster. They deal a lot of damage. They can take a lot of damage. Their only real weakness is AoE and tight corridors when you can't squeeze enough ants through. Very powerful. They're probably going to go here. That is something I forgot to mention about our little black ants. They're actually really powerful in corridors because you can have lots of them. You can have a lot more of them than other ants because they have a smaller hitbox. And they also confuse enemies, so that's another strength of theirs. Pervasive are going to go here. While the free respawns are nice, the Vigorous is such a massive power boost. I think it's somewhere on like 50% or something overall. And it's just so ridiculously strong. Right. Next, we have the Leafcutter Majors. Leafcutter Majors are amazing tanks that deal a pretty good amount of damage for what they are. They're obviously very expensive, and they're okay at gathering leaves. They gather as much as Media, but they cost twice as much, so they're very expensive. And they're the least efficient of all of the leafcutter ants when it comes to farming. Thankfully, they're not good. That's not what they're supposed to do. And instead, their goal is to beat the crap out of everything. So individually, stun is decently useful, especially against like army ants and stuff. Interrupting them from attacking and gaining the stacks is very good. But the fact that stun doesn't work against larger creatures like big whip spiders, crickets, and leafcutter and mantises really holds it back. And the slow they gain at level 3 is basically useless. That's terrible. Why would you want slow on a melee unit? So they're going in strong. Taunts, on the other hand, um, they're not as good at level 1, but at level 3 they're way better with the massive amount of physical resistance they get at low health, helping them to become massively good tanks. Their level 1 ability of taunting and gaining a little bit of health is still pretty good, though, and they hold up much better when it comes to stronger creatures. But yeah, so stun when you want to kill ants, and taunt when you want to kill bigger creatures that can't be stunned. Alright, Media. I personally think Media are super underrated, and they are the backbone of good leafcutter strategies. They're super underrated hard workers. They are more efficient than workers when it comes to leaf gathering, due to not being slowed down by holding leaves and gathering more than twice as much. And even actually gaining a little bit more leaf gathering at higher levels, though I still would not upgrade them. It's better to just have a massive army of them, and they can actually deal a pretty good amount of damage when you have enough of them. They are going to go in okay, but I think they're pretty good and would be here. However, they're just not on the same level as these ants. Alright, slave makers. Slave makers are going to go in strong. Well, very weak at lower levels. Um, especially like in 1.2. They're all at level 1, so they lose to black ants one-on-one, which makes them really bad because they cost more. However, at level 2, they barely beat them, and at level 3, they easily beat them. At level 3, they get a massive power boost and are some of the best ants in the game. However, that's only at level 3, so you really only want to get these if you have a massive surplus of food to build with. So a decent part of the counterpart colony, but probably the least used. Alright, Trapjaws. Trapjaws are really dumb. The healing that they gain makes them good mini tanks. They deal good damage. The only really bad thing I have to say about them is that they're pretty pricey, and poison attacks and stuff that kills them in one hit really does not help them when it comes to their ability. So yeah. Alright. Ranged. Ranged are going into S. The fact that these things have more DPS than melee ants, even like super OP ones that are meant for doing high melee damage, is really dumb. The fact that you give a ranged unit more DPS than a melee one, so that they don't even get damaged, is really ridiculous. They have, I think, the highest single target DPS in the game, even higher than some of the best ones, except for maybe like these guys and Majors when rage mode it up. Yeah, the slow is nice, I guess. The slow at level 3 is kind of nice, but it's really kind of just like a bonus more than anything else. And it won't make or break your fights usually. It's kind of nice for like killing spiders and such that are running around in your nest, or 1v1ing something so that it can't get close, but otherwise it's just kind of meh. Alright, mortars, they are going here simply because they are less reliable and basically worse in every way than ranged before you get to level 3. They miss ladybugs, which really sucks. They miss a lot of fast stuff, even like slow stuff too, they miss as well, if you can't pin it down. So, they lose out, and they have less DPS, so they basically lose out. However, at level 3, they become basically the ultimate anti-ant killer. They can and will murder everything in their path. At 2.2, you can just see them in action, just absolutely murdering the enemies, and it makes that level, even on insane with challenge, kind of a joke. Yeah, but before, the only reason they're not an S is because they are only good against clumped up enemies, and they're prone to missing. So, but when they are basically the best anti-ant in the game. So, yeah. Alright, and then finally we have Wood Ant Melee. He's decent and all, but he loses to, he's worse than workers, honestly. It's better to just spam a bajillion workers than do these guys early. Though they are pretty good later when you can, get a good enough amount of them and at high levels. So they do have their uses, but workers are way better meat shields early on. So they kind of lose out. Alright, that is the tier list of these guys, and I hope you have enjoyed. See y'all next time.